Classical physics could predict planets, engines, and light. But the moment scientists looked inside the atom, reality fell apart. To fix physics, we needed one equation, an equation so powerful it built an entirely new universe. Welcome. Today, we're going to explore the equation that created quantum mechanics. It's a cornerstone of modern science. By the end of our discussion, you'll be able to understand the core idea behind this equation, which is that particles behave like waves. You'll also see how this idea solved one of the biggest mysteries in early 20th century physics, the stability of the atom. Our journey begins with the stability of the atom. According to classical physics, atoms shouldn't exist. The prevailing model was the Rutherford model, a small, dense nucleus at the center, with electrons orbiting it, much like planets orbit the sun. Here's what that looks like. It's a nice, simple picture. But there's a huge problem. This model contradicts a fundamental rule of electromagnetism. You see, a circulating electron is an accelerating charge. And according to classical physics, any accelerating charge must radiate energy. As an electron radiates energy, it should lose momentum and spiral inwards, eventually colliding with the nucleus. The atom should collapse in a tiny fraction of a second. But atoms are stable, so the model is wrong. It fails to explain reality. So, how do we solve this? The first step was taken by Niels Bohr in 1913. He proposed a revolutionary model. Bohr didn't know why atoms were stable, but he could describe how they behaved. He made a bold assumption, which he called a postulate. He said that electrons can only exist in certain fixed orbits, which he called stationary states. He also said that while an electron is in one of these orbits, it doesn't radiate any energy. It's stable. Think of it like a ladder. An electron can sit on a rung, but it can't hover between them. The rungs are the allowed energy levels. His second postulate explained how electrons move between these orbits. When an electron jumps from a high-energy orbit to a lower-energy one, the atom emits a tiny packet of light called a photon. The photon's energy is exactly equal to the difference in energy between the two orbits. This is what gives elements their unique emission spectra. Bohr's postulates explained the stability of the atom and the existence of discrete spectral lines. It was a massive success, but his model was descriptive, not explanatory. It didn't answer the deeper question: why were these orbits stable? It was like having the right answer on a test, but no work to show. There had to be a fundamental reason for the stability. This brings us to a remarkable idea, an idea that connects the world of particles with the world of waves. The hero of our story is Louis de Broglie. In 1904, as part of his PhD thesis, de Broglie proposed a shocking idea. He hypothesized that matter, like light, can behave as both a wave and a particle. Light, as we know, has both wave properties, like interference, and particle properties, photons. De Broglie turned this around and asked, what if particles, like electrons, also have wave properties? He proposed a simple equation to connect a particle's momentum, which is a particle property, to the wavelength of its associated wave, which is a wave property. Here, lambda, the Greek letter, is the wavelength. H is Planck's constant, a very tiny number from quantum mechanics. And p is the momentum of the particle, which is its mass times its velocity. So, every particle with momentum p has a wavelength given by Planck's constant divided by p. The faster and heavier the particle, the shorter its wavelength. So how does de Broglie's wave hypothesis explain the Bohr model? Imagine an electron wave orbiting the nucleus. For this wave to be stable, it can't just be any size. It has to form what's called a standing wave. A standing wave is a wave that oscillates in a fixed position. Think of a guitar string. It can only vibrate at certain frequencies and wavelengths. In an atom, the electron wave is constrained by the orbit. For it to be a stable standing wave, it must connect back to itself smoothly. This means the circumference of the orbit must be a whole number of wavelengths. Mathematically, we can write this condition. The circumference of a circular orbit is 2 times p times its radius. So we must have 2 lambda, wherein is a positive integer, 1, 2, 3, and so on. Each integer corresponds to a specific allowed orbit. Suddenly, Bohr's arbitrary orbits have a natural wave-mechanical explanation. Let's put this into practice with a worked example. We can use the standing wave condition to rederive one of Bohr's key postulates. Let's start with our standing wave condition, and let's use de Broglie's equation. We can substitute the expression for wavelength into the condition. This gives us 2 peaceful h/c. Now, let's rearrange this equation to solve for the momentum times the radius, pr. We get p r e n h by 2 pi. What is p times r? For an electron in a circular orbit, this quantity, momentum times radius, is the electron's orbital angular momentum. So we find that the angular momentum, L, must be a whole number, n, times a fundamental constant, h bar. This is Bohr's postulate of quantized angular momentum, derived from de Broglie's wave hypothesis. De Broglie's hypothesis was a brilliant step, but it had a limitation. It told us that particles are waves, and it described their wavelength. But in physics, we usually describe waves with a wave equation. Think of a wave on water or a guitar string. Its behavior is governed by a differential equation. We needed a similar equation for these new matter waves. This is where our main character, Erwin Schrödinger, enters the scene. In late 1925, armed with de Broglie's idea, Schrödinger set out to find this wave equation. He asked, what equation, when solved, would give us the allowed energy levels and wave patterns that explain the atom? So, how did Schrödinger find his equation? The standard story says he derived it from a known wave equation. But that's not quite right. A more accurate and enlightening way to think about it is that he started with an intuition. If an electron is a wave, its total energy should be the sum of its kinetic energy and potential energy, just like any classical object. He took this classic physics equation and translated it into the language of quantum mechanics. He replaced the energy, momentum, and position with mathematical operators that act on a new quantity. This new quantity is the wave function, which we denote with the Greek letter psi. The wave function is the core of quantum mechanics. It contains all the information about our particle wave. Schrödinger's brilliant insight was to replace classical variables like energy and momentum with mathematical operators that act on the wave function psi. So let's see the famous equation itself. Here it is. This is Schrödinger's time-independent equation. Let's break it down piece by piece. At its heart, it's an eigenvalue problem, which means it asks a specific question. It asks, what are the functions psi for which the action of h, the Hamiltonian operator, simply gives back psi times a constant e? The Hamiltonian operator h represents the total energy of the system. It's built from the kinetic and potential energy operators. Solving this equation gives us two things. It gives us the allowed energy levels, E, for the system. These are the quantized energy levels that Bohr proposed. And it gives us the corresponding wave functions, psi, that describe the state of the system for each energy level. So we have a wave function, psi. But what is it? What does it mean? This is a subtle and crucial point. When Schrödinger first came up with the equation, he thought psi itself might represent the electron. He believed that an electron was just this diffuse cloud of probability, spread out in space. But this picture is very strange. If the electron is a wave, how does it interact with other particles? How does it make a trace on a screen? The answer came from Max Born. He proposed that the square of the magnitude of the wave function gives the probability of finding the particle at a certain location. Psi squared tells us the odds of finding the particle at any given spot. So the electron is still a point-like particle, but we can't know exactly where it is. We can only know the probability distribution of its location. Let's work through a very simple but fundamental example of solving the Schrödinger equation. The particle in a one-dimensional box. This might sound a bit artificial, but it's the perfect model to illustrate the quantization of energy. Imagine a tiny particle like an electron trapped in a one-dimensional box of length L. The walls of the box are infinitely high, meaning the particle can never escape. Inside the box, from x equals 0 to L, there's no force acting on the particle, so the potential energy is 0. At the walls, at x as 0 and xl, the potential energy is infinite. We can't get into the full mathematical solution today, but it's based on the standing wave condition. The wave function of the particle must be 0 at the walls of the box. This means it must form a standing wave, just like the de Broglie waves in the Bohr model. This gives us the quantized energy levels. The energy of the particle is proportional to n squared. The lowest energy is for nr1, and then nr2, and 3, and so on. And here are the corresponding wave functions. Each one is a beautiful standing wave pattern. The higher the energy, the more nodes the wave function has. Let's work through a quick practice question to test your understanding. Consider two particles in identical one-dimensional boxes. Particle B is twice as heavy as particle A. The question is, what is the ratio of their ground state energies, EA to EEB? Take a moment to pause the video and try to solve this on your own. Remember to use the formula we just derived for the energy levels. Okay, let's go over the solution. The key is to recognize that ground state means n equals 1. Here's our energy formula. With n due by 1, we can see that the energy E is inversely proportional to the mass m. This means the heavier the particle, the lower its ground state energy. So we can write the energy for particle A and particle B. Now we take their ratio. Many terms cancel out, leaving us with mb divided by ma. Since particle B is twice as heavy as particle A, the ratio of the masses is 2. Therefore, the ratio of their ground state energies is 2. The lighter particle has more energy. So, let's recap what we've learned. We started with the mystery of the atom's stability. Bohr's model provided a descriptive answer. It explained the atom's stability by introducing the concept of stationary states. Then de Broglie provided the explanation. He hypothesized that particles are waves, and these waves could form stable, quantized standing waves inside the atom. Finally, Schrödinger provided the mathematical framework. His wave equation, when solved for a specific potential, yields the allowed quantized energy levels and the wave functions that describe the system's state. This equation, with Born's probability interpretation, completed the foundations of non-relativistic quantum mechanics. It's a testament to the power of mathematics to describe the universe, even when that description challenges our everyday intuition about reality.